All right, let's talk about section 6.20. This one we're going to call simple interest equation to find interest. So this section talks about this problem that a lot of people will face throughout their lives in when you need money or you're going to buy something expensive and you don't have the cash for it. So then how do you get it instead? For example, say if someone's going to buy a new car. Ben is looking to buy a car. And he wants to buy a new car, and say the price tag on this car is $18,000, which is a lot of money. And typically, most people don't have just $18,000 sitting around in the bank. Some people do, of course, but most people don't. So what you would do to get this money is you would talk to a bank, and they would loan you the money. Now, this money, though, isn't free. We have to pay for the privilege to use this money. And this typically comes in the form of an interest rate. If you've ever seen a car commercial or a bank commercial, you have seen them talk about this interest rate. And the key here is what's going on in this section. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of these terms before we continue on. So first, we have, let me use a different color, we have our interest. And the interest is the charge for the money that's borrowed. A bank or something like that is going to give you the money, but you're going to have to pay extra that you have to give back. So, for example, with Ben and his car, he might buy the car for the $18,000. But by the time he's done paying it off after his loan, he may have paid $23,000. Well then, why, if he bought something for $18,000, shouldn't he have only paid $18,000? Well, no. The bank took $5,000 over the course of a year, 5 years, 10 years, for that privilege of lending him money. Because some people borrow this money and then don't pay it back. So the bank needs to make up money for this risk that they take on to lend money. Okay? The next term that we're going to be talking about is the principal. Now, the principal is not, in this case, the person in charge of a school or something like that. But instead, the principal is the amount originally borrowed. In this case, it would be the $18,000 that Ben got after he took the loan. And our last thing is we have our rate of interest. This rate is typically going to be in the form of a percent. And the rate tells us the percent charged. And it is typically charged over time. Now, we need one last term to work on this formula. This is one that we're going to know, but we do use time. And in our formula, our time is always going to be measured in years. So if they give us in weeks or months, you have to convert. All right, so let's take a little example. Now, not the example that I used earlier, but take a look at an example here. What we're going to be doing is looking at this formula, which gives us an equation for how our interest is earned. And it looks like this. Interest equals the principal times the rate times the time. And if I write this simpler, I usually see it more like this. I equals PRT. P for principal, R for rate, and T for time. And I don't have to put the times together. I can kind of just mash all of those letters together, and it gives me a pretty clear little formula that I can use. And I'm going to be using this formula and manipulating it to get these different numbers in the different parts. For this one, though, we are mainly going to be looking for this R. And we're going to be solving for this R in a variety of different ways. Let's take a look at an example where we can use the formula like this. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. We've got Wanda, and she borrowed $5,000 from the bank. Now, you don't need to buy a car to borrow money. You can borrow money for any reason. But you have to convince the bank that you'll be able to pay it back, and that you typically have need for a good purpose. After 3 years, she paid $450. In interest. What was the rate? All right, so for this problem, all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing some substituting into the formula that I had on the previous page. So just like I always do, I'm going to write out my formula to start. I equals PRT. Okay, so what do I know? I know my interest, I know my principal, and I know the time. Oh, that just leaves me with one variable left, and I can always solve for one variable. Okay, my interest looks to be $450. I can just replace that in. My principal, that's what I started with, was $5,000. I'm going to multiply that by my rate, which I don't know, and I'm going to multiply that by my time in years, times 3. Okay, well, now I've got a algebraic formula here with one variable, and I can solve that fairly easily. Let me grab my phone so we can do some quick math. All right, first I'm going to simplify this side of my equation because I have 5,000 times 3. Now I can do that in my head, which should be 15,000, but we'll just check it and make sure I did it right. I've got 15,000 times R equals 450. Well, if I want R by itself, I know the drill here. I'm just going to divide both sides by whatever is being multiplied by my R. So in this case, I'm going to divide it by 15,000. Now it's okay to divide by a big number like this. It's probably going to give me a small decimal. At least that's what I would hope. Cross these off. I've got R 450 divided by 15,000. It's going to give me 0.03. Well, and I'm really looking for a percent in this case, and I can take this and turn this into a percent very easily. And I'm just going to write this as 3%. It's the rate that she borrowed. 3% is actually a pretty good rate to borrow money at. I wish I could get 3% on some of my student loans. Okay, if you feel like you understood how I did this, go ahead and go on to do the homework. I'm going to do probably one or two more if you'd like me to see how I do it again. Okay, this time we're going to look at Fred. And Fred's going to do some money borrowing as well. And he borrowed $500. He paid $50 in interest. And he paid it after 1 year. Okay, well, this seems pretty clear. It's going to be pretty much the same as last time. I'm going to write my formula. I always like to do that. I equals PRT. Okay, my interest, I've got 50. My principal was 500 to start, times R, which I don't know my R yet. And my time is 1. Well, this time when I'm simplifying the side, 500 times 1, that's really easy. 500R equals 50. Okay, I'm going to divide both sides to get my R by itself. Divide by 500, which means I have to divide this side by 500, which should give me, I'm guessing 0.1, but we'll see. 50 divided by 500 is 0.1. I have 0.1 equals my R. Well, I don't want it as a decimal. I really am looking for it as a percent. So I can take this, turn it into a percent, and I know that I'm just going to slide the decimal point. Oops, my decimal's here. 1, 2. Sorry, wrong direction. If I take my decimal, 1, 2, and it's going to give me 10%. 0.1 to percents is 10%. Okay, I'm going to do one more. And this one's going to be quicker if you'd like to watch it. Example 3. All right. This time, let's see. We have well, I'll just pull. Let's look at number 1 on the homework. 500 at 4% for 2 years. Now in this case, I'm not solving for my rate, which is kind of nice. I'm just looking for the interest. So I'm just going to plug it into my formula and see how it goes. My formula here is I equals PRT. I is, well, I don't know my I, so my principal is 500 times 0.04 times 2. This one's easy for me to calculate. And this one, it looks like my interest here is going to be $40 that I'm going to be paying. Not too bad for that amount alone. Now, looks like the homework is mostly going to be these similar problems, and it should be much easier than the solving that we had to do before. And go ahead and good luck.